Samuel Harris was the sort of man who could walk through a room full of shouting soldiers and be completely invisible. The base had been his home for nearly 5 years, not because he craved adventure, but because he had found a rhythm in the quiet corners of administration. His desk was meticulously organized, his papers always in perfect order, and his pen never smudged. To anyone glancing at him, Samuel was just another clerk, polite, unobtrusive, and exceptionally ordinary. Yet behind the thin glasses and neatly pressed shirt was a mind that was anything but ordinary. Every morning, Samuel arrived before sunrise, quietly passing through the empty corridors of the base headquarters. He enjoyed the silence that preceded the chaos of the day, the hum of fluorescent lights, the faint scent of ink and printer toner, the distant clatter of boots on concrete. In this calm, he prepared himself, practicing the discipline and patience he had cultivated for years. Martial arts, strategy games, endurance exercises, these were his secret companions. The soldiers might have laughed if they knew the clerk filing reports could perform a perfect roundhouse kick, dodge a sprinting opponent, or calculate a battlefield move before anyone else could blink. Despite his skills, Samuel never sought attention. His life was quiet by design. He knew the power of observation, of blending in, of waiting for the right moment. The soldiers thought him meek, the officers thought him harmless, and the general staff hardly noticed him at all. That was exactly how he liked it, because in invisibility there was freedom, a freedom to watch, to learn, and to prepare for the day when courage would call for more than filing forms or fetching coffee. Today, however, the base hummed with a different energy. Samuel could feel it in the tension that hung in the air, like static before a storm. Soldiers moved with more purpose, drills echoed louder, and the officers whispered in clusters by the bulletin boards. Something important was about to happen. The general had called a meeting, a rare occurrence that immediately signaled that routine orders and paperwork would be replaced by something far more serious. Samuel filed the last of his morning reports, straightened his tie, and adjusted his glasses. He glanced at the clock. In 20 minutes, he would be at the briefing room, blending in as always, yet fully aware of the potential chaos about to unfold. As he walked down the hall, he passed the drill fields where soldiers ran through obstacle courses under the watchful eye of Drill Sergeant Thompson. The man was a mountain of muscle and fury, his booming voice cutting through the morning air like a cannon. "Move! Faster! Discipline, soldiers, discipline!" he yelled, and the soldiers flinched under his gaze. Samuel paused for a moment, quietly observing. The drill sergeant had skill, no doubt, but he relied on intimidation, on noise and showmanship. He didn't notice subtleties, and he certainly didn't notice the quiet man walking unnoticed down the corridor. A man who had spent years studying the principles that made the drill sergeant so feared, and yet predictable. Samuel reached the briefing room and slipped inside, nodding politely to the officers already seated. Soldiers filled the benches, buzzing with excitement and speculation. Today, the general would announce a challenge, one that required a volunteer. Everyone knew it would test courage, skill, and resilience. The soldiers whispered amongst themselves, confident in their own abilities. Some were eager to show off. Some were nervous. Some, like the drill-hardened officers, were sure the challenge would be trivial for a trained soldier. Samuel sat in the back, quietly taking notes, his expression neutral. No one paid him any attention, not yet. As the doors swung open, General Rutherford entered, his presence commanding the room into silence. The man's reputation preceded him, strategic genius, a stern disciplinarian yet fair and discerning. Samuel's gaze met the general's for a brief moment, steady and calm, before turning back to his notes. Today, something would happen that no one in the room, not even the general himself, could anticipate. For Samuel Harris, the quiet clerk, the waiting was over. The storm that had been silently building within him for years was ready to emerge, though the soldiers, the drill sergeant, and even the general had no idea it was coming. Samuel adjusted his chair, leaned back, and watched the general prepare to speak. In that moment, every movement, every gesture, every glance became part of a larger calculation in Samuel's mind. The quiet clerk who no one noticed was about to step into a situation that would change the base forever. And though the soldiers didn't see it, and though the drill sergeant laughed at the idea of a clerk volunteering, Samuel's calm confidence concealed a readiness that would shock everyone present. The quietest man in the room, unnoticed and underestimated, was preparing to rewrite what they thought they knew about courage, skill, and the element of surprise. The room fell into a tense silence as General Rutherford straightened his jacket and surveyed the assembly. Soldiers shifted in their seats, whispering and nudging one another, trying to predict what kind of challenge awaited them. The general's reputation for unpredictability preceded him, and even the seasoned officers and drill sergeants felt a faint edge of anticipation. His eyes, sharp and assessing, scanned the crowd before settling briefly on Samuel in the back row. The clerk, as always, appeared calm, almost invisible. Most of the soldiers didn't even notice him. "Today," General Rutherford began, his voice firm and measured, "we are testing the readiness and ingenuity of our personnel. This will not be a test of rank or size, but of courage, skill, and strategy." The words reverberated in the room. Some soldiers straightened in excitement, others swallowed nervously. The drill sergeant, Thompson, leaned forward, grinning confidently. He was certain that no challenge could shake him, no volunteer could outmatch his years of experience. The general continued, "I am seeking a volunteer to demonstrate capability in a field scenario. The task will require physical endurance, mental acuity, and improvisational skill. This will not be easy." A murmur spread through the soldiers. They all knew the drills, the training exercises, the usual competitions, but this sounded different, more dangerous, more revealing, more important. Thompson's grin widened. "Sounds like my kind of test," he muttered under his breath, drawing a few laughs from nearby soldiers. As the general's gaze swept the room again, he paused. "Who among you will step forward?" Silence fell, thick and awkward. Soldiers exchanged uncertain glances. The bravest, most confident faces seemed to hesitate. Perhaps they were afraid of failure, or perhaps they underestimated the test. Thompson banged his fist on the table for emphasis. "Step up, men, don't embarrass yourselves." His voice was booming, intended to intimidate and rally, but it only added tension to the room. And then it happened. From the far back of the room, where no one had paid attention, a hand slowly rose. Samuel Harris. The movement was calm, deliberate, and utterly unassuming. A faint ripple of laughter spread through the room. "The clerk," one soldier muttered, disbelief evident in his voice. "You've got to be kidding," another whispered. The room erupted in murmurs. Thompson's smirk faltered. He stared, eyebrows raised, a mixture of irritation and disbelief crossing his face. The general's eyes narrowed and then twinkled. "You," he said simply, acknowledging Samuel without a hint of surprise. The clerk nodded, serene, unshaken by the roomful of skeptical faces and snide remarks. Thompson took a step forward, his chest puffed. "Clerk," he barked, "this isn't some paperwork exercise. You won't survive the first 5 minutes out there. Step aside before you embarrass yourself in front of everyone." The laughter intensified. Soldiers exchanged amused glances, some whispering bets on how quickly Samuel would fail. But Samuel did not move. He did not flinch. He did not respond. His calm composure was unnerving, a stark contrast to Thompson's booming, aggressive energy. The general's voice cut through the tension. "If he volunteers, Sergeant, he will have his chance. No interference." Thompson growled softly, realizing that the general's word was law. Samuel straightened his back, eyes fixed ahead, a quiet determination radiating from his posture. The room seemed to hold its breath. For a moment time slowed. Soldiers stared, expecting hesitation, expecting a nervous fumble, but Samuel remained composed. The whispers quieted, replaced by a growing tension. Some began to wonder, could this unassuming clerk actually be serious? The general leaned back slightly, folding his arms. There was a challenge ahead, yes, but perhaps, just perhaps, the clerk could surprise them all. The general outlined the exercise. It would test agility, combat awareness, and mental strategy, combining obstacle courses, problem-solving tasks, and controlled sparring scenarios. Samuel listened intently, analyzing each element with precision. He had anticipated a challenge like this, studied countless drills in secret, and prepared strategies that even seasoned soldiers might overlook. The soldiers chuckled nervously at the apparent audacity of a clerk volunteering, yet an unspoken tension began to build. Samuel was calm, collected, and the odds seemed to be shifting, even if no one realized it yet. Drill Sergeant Thompson stepped forward again, more out of pride than concern. "You'll regret this, clerk," he muttered under his breath, his voice carrying throughout the room. Samuel did not respond. He merely adjusted his sleeve and waited for the next instruction. In that moment, the room realized that the challenge had just become far more interesting than anyone could have predicted. The quiet clerk was no longer invisible. He was about to step into a storm of doubt, skill, and expectation, and everyone in the room would be watching. The entire room seemed to freeze as Samuel Harris, the quiet clerk, stepped forward. Every soldier, every officer, every pair of skeptical eyes turned toward him. A soft rustle of murmurs spread like wildfire. The clerk. "Are you serious? He's not even in uniform for this." Even Drill Sergeant Thompson, usually unshakable, felt a jolt of disbelief. His brow furrowed, chest swelling with indignation. He had been preparing to show everyone that no one, not even a clerk, could match his years of training. But this was unexpected. Thompson took a menacing step toward Samuel, his boots thudding on the polished floor. "Step aside, clerk. This isn't for you," he barked, voice echoing against the walls. The laughter that accompanied his threat was sharp, derisive. Soldiers nudged each other, some joking openly that Samuel wouldn't last a single minute, while others quietly bet on how fast he would fail. Confidence radiated from Thompson like heat from a furnace. He expected an easy display of superiority, a moment to humiliate a paper pusher in front of the whole base. But Samuel remained entirely composed. He didn't shrink back, didn't mutter an excuse, didn't even flinch. His posture was straight, his hands relaxed at his sides, his gaze calm yet unwavering. There was no arrogance in it, only quiet, measured confidence. The general's eyes, sharp and piercing, lingered on Samuel with curiosity and approval. "If he volunteers, Sergeant, interference will not be tolerated," the general said, his tone precise and commanding. Thompson gritted his teeth, realizing that, for the first time in years, his authority would not intimidate the man standing before him. Samuel spoke softly, barely audible but clear enough for the nearest soldiers to hear. "I'm ready." The words were simple, almost casual, yet the weight behind them was unmistakable. He wasn't begging for approval. He wasn't seeking attention. He was merely stating a fact. He was prepared. The room went quiet again, this time with genuine curiosity. Soldiers leaned forward, officers adjusted their posture, and Thompson's mouth tightened into a thin line. This clerk, this unassuming man, had just challenged the drill sergeant with nothing but calm certainty. Thompson stepped closer, his booming voice attempting to reassert control. "You don't even know the rules. This is dangerous. You're not trained for this." Samuel's eyes flicked toward him, assessing, calculating. "I've been preparing," he replied quietly, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. It was not a smile of arrogance. It was the calm assurance of someone who had trained in silence, who had studied the human body and mind, who knew that appearances were deceptive. Every soldier in the room could feel the shift in atmosphere. Laughter had faded. Skepticism had given way to intrigue. The general cleared his throat, regaining the attention of everyone present. "Very well," he said, voice even. "Samuel Harris will demonstrate his abilities in the exercise. Sergeant Thompson, you will supervise, not interfere." The command hung in the air, like a bell tolling before a storm. Thompson clenched his fists, jaw tight, but he stepped back. He could not argue with a direct order, though every muscle in his body urged him to dominate the situation. Samuel, meanwhile, didn't take a step toward drama. He simply moved to the starting position outlined by the general. Soldiers whispered among themselves, some openly mocking, some silently anxious. "This is ridiculous," one muttered. "He's just a clerk." Yet even in that doubt there was a flicker of tension. Everyone sensed that this was more than a test of skill. It was a moment that would redefine expectations. The room's energy shifted from amusement to anticipation. Every eye was on Samuel as he assumed his stance, calm and prepared. Thompson's confidence had been shaken. He had expected to control the scene effortlessly, and yet the clerk had disrupted his dominance without lifting a finger. Soldiers exchanged glances. Could it really be true? Could a man so quiet, so unassuming, be about to outperform a drill sergeant in his own element? Samuel's mind worked with clarity. He assessed the room, the sergeant, the course ahead. Every instinct, every calculation from years of secret preparation converged in that moment. The quiet clerk was no longer invisible. He was ready to step into the challenge, fully aware that the outcome would astonish everyone present. And in that charged silence, a single thought echoed in the minds of all watching. They were about to witness something none of them had ever imagined. Samuel inhaled deeply, exhaling slowly. Every muscle tensed in anticipation, yet he appeared calm, almost serene. This was the moment he had prepared for years of quiet discipline, of unseen practice, of patient observation, all converging in a single, decisive step. And as the general raised his hand to signal the beginning, Samuel moved forward, not with hesitation but with absolute, unshakable certainty. The quiet clerk had volunteered. And in doing so, he had already begun to shock everyone in the room. Samuel Harris stood at the edge of the obstacle course, his calm presence in stark contrast to the flurry of nervous energy around him. Soldiers darted about, stretching, warming up, and muttering predictions about who would shine and who would fail. Drill Sergeant Thompson paced nearby, arms crossed, a smirk masking his irritation. He assumed that Samuel's brief, quiet step forward would end in humiliation. Yet there was something in the clerk's measured movements that unnerved him, an invisible confidence that could not be intimidated by shouts or threats. The challenge was rigorous, climbing walls, scaling ropes, maneuvering through simulated combat zones, completing problem-solving tasks under pressure, and engaging in controlled sparring. For trained soldiers, it was difficult but manageable. For Samuel, it would be a chance to show what years of preparation could achieve. He didn't rush, didn't show off, and didn't respond to the whispers or laughter around him. Instead, he assessed every obstacle, every corner of the course. Every move of the drill sergeant and other participants became data for him to analyze. Thompson barked instructions, trying to throw Samuel off balance. "Clerk, don't just stand there. You'll be eaten alive if you hesitate." The sarcasm in his tone was sharp, meant to humiliate, but Samuel didn't flinch. His movements were smooth and deliberate. He scaled walls efficiently, rolled over obstacles with a precision that startled soldiers, and calculated each action to conserve energy while maximizing effectiveness. Thompson's voice grew louder, his attempts at intimidation growing frantic as the clerk calmly completed each challenge with methodical skill. The soldiers began to notice subtle things. Samuel anticipated the course's hazards, sidestepping pitfalls that others barely saw. He improvised clever shortcuts and used the environment to his advantage. A low wall became a stepping point. A rope swing became a tactical maneuver to conserve energy while gaining momentum. Where soldiers relied on brute force, Samuel relied on timing, strategy, and control. He moved like water, adaptable, calm, and unstoppable. Some soldiers whispered in awe. Others, still skeptical, narrowed their eyes, trying to catch him in a mistake. Thompson, meanwhile, became increasingly agitated. Every time he shouted, Samuel maintained his composure. Every attempt to intimidate, Samuel turned into an opportunity to demonstrate skill. During sparring drills, he was precise and efficient, countering the sergeant's strength with technique rather than force. Thompson had spent years perfecting aggressive, overwhelming tactics, but Samuel anticipated each one, redirecting momentum, exploiting openings, and using minimal energy for maximum impact. Soldiers watched, riveted, as their assumptions of who belonged on the field began to crumble. Even the general, observing from the sidelines, raised an eyebrow in interest. Samuel's quiet demeanor masked a level of skill that could not be ignored. It wasn't just physical ability. It was strategy, timing, and instinct honed in silence over years. Samuel moved with an ease that suggested patience and preparation far beyond his outward appearance. His calm analysis of each obstacle, each maneuver, made the entire exercise appear almost effortless, though the physical toll on his body was immense. By the end of the first hour, a subtle change had overtaken the room. Laughter had disappeared. Smirks had faded. Soldiers whispered in awe, eyes following every movement, uncertain whether they were witnessing luck or genius. Thompson, visibly flustered, began shouting less and analyzing more. He realized, perhaps too late, that this clerk was no ordinary volunteer. Samuel's movements were calculated, controlled, and adaptive, his focus unbreakable, his confidence unshakable. As the sun climbed higher, Samuel moved to the final exercise, a simulated sparring match against Thompson himself. The drill sergeant flexed, ready to assert dominance, but Samuel's calm gaze and deliberate stance unsettled him. Years of intimidation, of loud commands and bluster, could not compete with quiet skill honed in secret. Samuel's body was coiled, alert, and ready. His mind processed each variable, predicting Thompson's attacks while calculating responses that would conserve energy and maximize effect. Soldiers crowded around, leaning forward, sensing the tension. Samuel wasn't just completing the training, he was rewriting expectations. The quiet clerk, invisible for so long, had become the center of attention, not through showmanship or arrogance, but through precision, discipline, and quiet mastery. Even Thompson, the drill sergeant who had thought himself untouchable, felt the first crack of uncertainty. By the end of the day, Samuel had completed the course flawlessly, leaving soldiers and officers alike in stunned silence. Whispers of admiration circulated. How did he? He wasn't even supposed to be able to do that. The general nodded subtly, clearly impressed. Samuel, still calm and composed, gathered his notes, adjusted his glasses, and prepared for what would come next, the final confrontation that would determine whether the quiet clerk could truly shock the entire base. The arena was alive with tension. Soldiers lined the perimeter, forming a rough semicircle, eyes wide, breath held. Even the officers, usually stoic and unmoved, leaned forward, sensing the gravity of the moment. At the center stood Drill Sergeant Thompson, a mountain of muscle and confidence, his chest heaving, ready to assert dominance. Across from him, calm and composed, stood Samuel Harris, the quiet clerk, unassuming yet radiating a presence that defied expectation. The room seemed to pulse with anticipation, the air thick with disbelief. No one had ever expected this, the unremarkable clerk facing the base's fiercest drill sergeant in a one-on-one test. The general raised a hand, signaling the start. Begin. Thompson lunged immediately, his attacks aggressive and loud, each strike designed to overpower and intimidate. His years of experience had taught him that strength and speed were often enough to dominate opponents. He assumed Samuel would falter under pressure, that the clerk's calm facade would crumble the moment physical confrontation began. But Samuel was prepared. His eyes were sharp, analyzing, calculating every angle, every movement. He shifted with fluid precision, dodging the first few blows as if he had anticipated them years in advance. Gasps erupted from the spectators. Samuel didn't attack recklessly, he moved deliberately, each action measured, conserving energy while turning Thompson's aggression against him. The drill sergeant struck hard, aiming to unbalance Samuel with sheer force, but the clerk sidestepped, countered, and used minimal movement to redirect Thompson's momentum. Soldiers whispered in disbelief. Did he just? He's not even using full strength. Even some of the more seasoned soldiers began to wonder if Samuel's calm, analytical style might actually work against someone as aggressive as Thompson. Thompson's frustration grew. His strikes became more desperate, more forceful as he tried to regain control. Samuel remained a step ahead, responding with precise counters, using leverage and timing rather than brute strength. Each dodge and pivot demonstrated skill honed in secret, years of discipline hidden beneath his quiet exterior. Samuel was neither reckless nor flashy. Every movement had purpose. Every step conserved energy and exploited an opening. The soldiers around them held their breath as they watched the clerk turn what seemed like vulnerability into an advantage. Sweat glistened on Thompson's brow as he realized with growing horror that the clerk was not only keeping pace, he was dictating it. Samuel anticipated attacks, subtly maneuvered around obstacles, and used the drill sergeant's own strength against him. A well-timed sidestep here, a redirect of force there, and Thompson's confidence began to crack. He had dominated hundreds of recruits over the years, but this quiet clerk was unlike anyone he had faced. Each strike he landed against Samuel seemed only to highlight Samuel's mastery of defense and strategy. Samuel's eyes never left Thompson's. Calm, unshaken, he saw opportunities where Thompson saw only aggression. A miscalculated swing from the sergeant allowed Samuel to pivot and counter, using a controlled takedown that left Thompson momentarily stunned. The soldiers erupted in whispers of astonishment. He did that. The clerk just. The room's energy shifted from curiosity to awe. Samuel's precision, timing, and mental acuity were rewriting every expectation in the room. Thompson regained his footing, fury and disbelief fueling him. He attacked with renewed aggression, trying to overwhelm Samuel with brute force. But Samuel had anticipated this. He moved like water, flowing around the sergeant's strength, subtly redirecting energy, exploiting weaknesses. Every maneuver was deliberate, efficient, and devastatingly effective. The drill sergeant, for the first time in his career, struggled to predict his opponent's next move. Samuel was calm, observant, unstoppable. Then came the decisive moment. Thompson lunged one final time, aiming for a powerful strike. Samuel sidestepped, slipped behind him, and executed a controlled takedown that sent the drill sergeant sprawling to the mat. Silence swept the room, broken only by the heavy breathing of both men. Samuel stood, hands relaxed at his sides, looking down at the defeated sergeant with quiet resolve. The impossible had happened. The clerk, the quiet, unassuming Samuel Harris, had bested the drill sergeant in front of the entire base. The soldiers erupted in cheers, clapping, and astonished exclamations. Thompson slowly rose, his expression a mixture of shock, humiliation, and grudging respect. Even the general allowed a small, approving nod. Samuel adjusted his glasses, collected his composure, and simply returned to his neutral stance as though nothing extraordinary had occurred. But everyone knew it had. The quiet clerk had done the unthinkable. He had turned the rules upside down, shocked the base, and proven that courage, skill, and preparation could defy every expectation. The arena was still as soldiers processed what had just happened. Samuel Harris, the quiet clerk, had defeated Drill Sergeant Thompson in front of the entire base. The outcome seemed impossible, yet there it was, undeniable. Thompson, usually a mountain of confidence, sat on the mat for a moment, catching his breath and staring at Samuel with wide eyes. Defeat had never looked like this, controlled, precise, and almost effortless. Samuel, on the other hand, stood calm and collected, adjusting his glasses and straightening his uniform as if he had simply completed a routine task. The soldiers erupted, first with gasps, then with cheers and claps. Some who had been skeptical moments before now whispered in awe, "He actually did it. I can't believe it." The clerk beat Thompson. Even the officers, who prided themselves on discipline and composure, exchanged astonished glances. Samuel's victory had not just been physical, it had shattered assumptions. Everyone had underestimated him, and now the quiet clerk commanded respect not through loud words, but through undeniable skill. Thompson slowly rose to his feet, brushing himself off, a mixture of frustration and admiration in his expression. He had dominated every trainee and volunteer for years, yet Samuel's calm, calculated approach had bested him without brute force. The drill sergeant's pride stung, but beneath it was an acknowledgement. This clerk was extraordinary. "You have skill," Thompson admitted grudgingly, voice low. Samuel nodded politely, offering no words of triumph. His respect was earned silently, and that silence spoke volumes. General Rutherford approached, his steps measured and authoritative. He stopped beside Samuel and extended a hand. "Exceptional," the general said, his tone carrying approval without exaggeration. "You've demonstrated courage, precision, and intelligence beyond your apparent experience. You've earned recognition today." Samuel shook the general's hand calmly, a faint, knowing smile on his face. He had not sought glory, but he had proven a point that could not be ignored. Even the soldiers who had laughed moments before now regarded him with newfound respect. The atmosphere on the base shifted. Whispers spread quickly. The clerk beat Thompson. "I didn't think it was possible. Did you see how calm he stayed?" Samuel had become a symbol, a reminder that appearances could be deceiving and that skill and preparation often hide in the quietest individuals. For the soldiers, it was a lesson in humility. For Thompson, it was a lesson in respect. And for Samuel, it was confirmation that his years of discreet training and disciplined preparation had finally found their stage. Recognition came swiftly. The general presented Samuel with a special commendation for courage and excellence. Officers approached, offering opportunities and assignments beyond clerical work. Soldiers sought advice, wanting to learn the techniques and mindset that had enabled him to triumph. Samuel accepted none of the attention with arrogance. Instead, he remained composed, encouraging curiosity and observation rather than prideful boasting. His demeanor inspired respect and admiration, without needing to demand it. Even Thompson, usually unyielding and confrontational, found himself humbled. He nodded once briefly, a silent acknowledgement that the clerk had earned his respect. "You've proven yourself," he said quietly. There was no derision, no bitterness, only grudging recognition. Thompson had trained countless soldiers, yet Samuel's victory reminded him that skill, focus, and strategy often mattered more than intimidation or brute force. It was a lesson he would not forget. Samuel took a quiet moment for reflection. He considered the journey that had led to this point. Years of secret practice, years of observing and preparing, moments of patience and discipline. He realized that the victory was not just physical but intellectual, a triumph of calm calculation over assumptions and arrogance. Samuel understood that courage could be subtle, determination could be silent, and strength could reside in the least expected places. By the end of the day, the base had changed in subtle but profound ways. Soldiers treated Samuel differently, with respect and curiosity. Officers consulted him, seeking insight. Thompson, once a figure of intimidation, now viewed him as a peer in skill, if not in rank. Samuel had not sought attention, but he had earned it through mastery, poise, and undeniable competence. The quiet clerk had shocked everyone by winning, not through bluster, but through precision, intelligence, and courage. The story of Samuel Harris would be remembered on the base for years to come, a reminder that the unexpected can always surprise and triumph. The excitement of the day slowly settled into a quiet buzz on the base. Soldiers returned to their routines, yet the story of Samuel Harris, the quiet clerk who had defeated Drill Sergeant Thompson, spread like wildfire. In the mess hall, in the barracks, even on the drill fields, whispers of his precision, calmness, and unexpected skill persisted. Samuel moved among them as he always had, unobtrusive, polite, and calm. But now, wherever he went, heads turned and conversations paused. His unassuming presence carried a new weight, one earned not through rank but through action. Officers and enlisted personnel alike sought him out. Some came with questions about his strategy, others simply to shake hands and express admiration. Even soldiers who had doubted him before approached, curiosity etched on their faces. Samuel answered questions thoughtfully, never boasting, never exaggerating. He explained principles of observation, timing, and patience, demonstrating that skill wasn't just about strength or aggression. It was about preparation, focus, and the ability to adapt under pressure. In every interaction, he remained calm, humble, and approachable, inspiring respect without demanding it. Drill Sergeant Thompson, still slightly bruised from the confrontation, observed Samuel with a mixture of pride and humility. The defeat had humbled him, but it had also earned his respect. He approached Samuel privately, voice quieter than usual. "You've got skill, Harris, more than I expected. I think I could learn from you." Samuel offered a faint smile. He did not gloat, nor did he assert superiority. He simply acknowledged Thompson's words with a nod. The moment was symbolic. The once dominant drill sergeant now recognized the power of quiet skill, discipline, and preparation over loud confidence. Samuel took time to reflect in his own mind, away from the cheers and attention. He considered the journey that had brought him here, the years of training in secret, the countless hours spent observing patterns, practicing techniques, and preparing mentally for moments just like this. He realized that the victory was not just about defeating a drill sergeant in a challenge. It was about proving a principle. The quiet, underestimated, and patient can overcome arrogance, noise, and assumptions. Strength, when paired with intelligence and preparation, is more effective than brute force alone. He thought about the soldiers who had doubted him, the laughter that had greeted his initial volunteer, and the looks of astonishment that followed. Samuel understood the lesson this had imparted. Never underestimate someone based on appearances or quiet demeanor. Courage could be silent, mastery could be hidden, potential could reside where no one expects. The experience confirmed what he had always known. Humility and preparation were far more powerful than bluster and bravado. In the days that followed, Samuel became a quiet mentor to several overlooked soldiers. He offered guidance to recruits who lacked confidence, showing them that discipline, observation, and strategy could compensate for inexperience. His mentorship was subtle, practical, and encouraging. Soldiers began to emulate his calm approach, learning to think, observe, and anticipate rather than react recklessly. Samuel's influence spread quietly, yet profoundly, changing the culture of respect, preparation, and patience on the base. The general, impressed by Samuel's performance and influence, called him into the office. "Harris, you've proven more than skill today," the general said. "You've proven leadership in the quietest, most effective way. I want you to continue mentoring, training, and preparing others. You've earned this opportunity." Samuel accepted the responsibility with humility. He did not crave recognition or status. His satisfaction came from knowing that he could make a difference, often in ways invisible to the unobservant eye. Even Drill Sergeant Thompson, once a figure of intimidation, adapted. He still maintained his authority, but he began to observe, to listen, and to acknowledge the value of strategy over mere aggression. Samuel's influence had changed him, and through him, the entire base began to shift. Soldiers learned to respect the underestimated, to value intelligence alongside strength, and to understand that courage comes in many forms. Samuel returned to his desk, resuming clerical duties as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Yet the base was no longer the same. He had proven that appearances are deceiving, that preparation matters, and that even the quietest individual can alter the course of events. He smiled inwardly, knowing that his journey was far from over, but content in the knowledge that he had earned respect, inspired others, and rewritten expectations, all without raising his voice. The morning sun rose over the base, casting a warm glow on the familiar buildings and training fields. Life continued as it always had. Soldiers reported for drills, officers reviewed schedules, and the smell of coffee wafted from the mess hall. Yet the atmosphere carried a subtle change. Conversations paused when Samuel walked by, and eyes followed him, not in mockery but in respect. The quiet clerk, once invisible, had become a symbol of unexpected skill, intelligence, and courage. The base would never see him the same way again. Samuel returned to his desk, quietly organizing paperwork and answering emails. It was the same routine he had always followed, but it was also different. He had been tested, had proven himself, and had earned the recognition of soldiers, officers, and even the formidable Drill Sergeant Thompson. The victory had been personal, yes, but it had also altered the culture of the base. Samuel understood that leadership was not about loud words or dominance. It was about influence, mentorship, and subtle guidance. Soldiers came to him in small groups, asking questions about strategy, timing, and preparation. Samuel demonstrated exercises, explained techniques, and guided them through mental approaches to challenges. Some laughed at first, still recalling the absurdity of a clerk defeating Thompson, but their laughter turned to awe as they practiced his methods. The lessons were practical yet profound. Observation mattered, patience mattered, and confidence mattered. Samuel's quiet mentorship began shaping a new generation of soldiers, instilling skills that would serve them in unexpected ways. Thompson, once the undisputed authority on the field, began to change as well. He had been humbled, yes, but he had also learned. He watched Samuel's methods, listened to his insights, and sometimes even practiced alongside him. The drill sergeant's aggression softened, replaced by a more measured approach to training. Soldiers noticed the change, too. The dynamic of the base shifted, less intimidation, more respect, less noise, more strategy. Samuel's influence, though quiet, rippled outward, transforming the way the base operated. General Rutherford, always observant, continued to monitor Samuel's growth. He recognized the rare combination of skill, calmness, and intelligence in the clerk. "Harris," the general said one afternoon, "you've accomplished more than many officers in your years. Your quiet leadership has proven invaluable. Keep teaching, guiding, and preparing. You've earned this trust." Samuel nodded respectfully, feeling neither pride nor arrogance, only satisfaction in knowing his efforts had a meaningful impact. In the evenings, when the base quieted, Samuel often returned to the observation deck above the headquarters. He watched soldiers train, moving through drills with precision and confidence, occasionally recalling the astonished faces of those who had doubted him. The memory reminded him that appearances could be deceiving, and that preparation, patience, and discipline often outshone loud bravado. He knew that courage could be subtle, and that influence could be exercised quietly, shaping the outcomes of countless unseen battles. One day, a young recruit approached Samuel nervously, holding a worn training manual. "Sir, I don't think I'm cut out for this. I can't keep up with the others," the recruit admitted, eyes downcast. Samuel smiled gently, a familiar calm in his voice. "Strength isn't always measured by size or noise," he said. "Preparation, observation, and patience matter more. Let me show you a few techniques. You'll be surprised what you can accomplish if you trust yourself." The recruit nodded, and for the first time he felt hope instead of fear. As weeks passed, Samuel's story became legend on the base. Soldiers would recount, often with humor and disbelief, the day the quiet clerk defeated the drill sergeant. But more importantly, they remembered the lessons he imparted. Skill could be cultivated quietly, courage did not require loud displays, and the underestimated could achieve the extraordinary. Samuel continued his work at the desk, yet he had become something more than a clerk. He had become a mentor, a guide, and an inspiration. And so life continued on the base. Samuel moved quietly through his days, filing reports and answering queries, yet each action carried weight, subtle but transformative. He had shown that excellence and courage often hide in the unassuming, and that influence is measured not by volume but by impact. The quiet clerk had shocked everyone, yes, but more importantly, he had left a lasting mark, a foundation of respect, skill, and inspiration that would guide the base for years to come. The sun set, casting long shadows across the training fields. Samuel looked out, calm and composed, yet aware of the journey ahead. For him, this was only the beginning. The quiet had proven its power, and the base, once full of doubt and underestimation, now knew that heroes could emerge from the most unlikely places. Samuel Harris, the clerk who had shocked everyone, smiled inwardly. The world had changed, quietly, subtly, and forever.